Welcome everyone to our online event for the Asian Adoptees of Canada in partnership with author Xinran and her organization, Mother's Bridge of Love. We're so pleased that each of you has joined us across Canada and from around the world. My name is Leah Kimbrighton, and I'll be your moderator for the session. If you're curious just how many cities and provinces are here, we have individuals from Vancouver, Calgary, Vancouver Island, Winnipeg, Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto, as well as from across the US and around the world in Sweden, France, and more. Before we get started, I did wish to begin with a land acknowledgement. Across Canada, we are fortunate to be able to gather on the unceded territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat people, as well as Coast Salish people of BC, Cree, Dakota, and Dene people of Manitoba. This land is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. As a brief overview for the event today, we'll do an introduction of the Asian Adoptees of Canada, as well as an introduction to the author Xinran and her organization, Mother's Bridge of Love, a very brief overview and history of China's one-child policy, and the history and context within Canada, our immigration, and importantly, the Q&A with author Xinran. At the end, we'll do a brief overview as far as birth search and returning to China as an adoptee, and questions as well. So there are certainly both new and familiar faces. For those who are unaware, the Asian Adoptees of Canada consists entirely of a volunteer board. We are a registered nonprofit federally here in Canada. Our board of directors includes myself, Leah Kimbrighton. I serve as the president, Megan, vice president of administration, Megan, Colin Nebakat, who is all things to do with the wizardry of our website, he's made it absolutely beautiful, and then Shelley, who's the director of engagement and social media. We have a number of events for both online and in person. Previously, we've had a number of different speakers, including directors, authors, and a number of in-person events that have been primarily located here in Toronto. As far as a bit of history, we were initially formed in 2007, provincially within the province of BC. That organization has splintered off into a couple of local chapters, and then the broader community. It was really during the pandemic. There were a number of adoptees who had reached out and really had demonstrated that there was still a need and an interest for a more national community across Canada to be connected. And so we have relaunched back in 2021, but our mission remains the same. Our main purpose being to share adoption-related resources, as well as to provide a space for dialogue and information sharing for all in the Asian Canadian adoptee network, including adult adoptees and adoptive families. Our lives as adoptees are unique, with many of us as transracial adoptees. Identity, race, and a sense of belonging with others who knows this journey can be a rarity. Except when we meet fellow adoptees, and there is simply a knowing of this lived experience and a familiarity of maybe the double takes that you experience when you're with your adoptive family, of the question of, no, but where are you really from? And of our own questions around our origin stories, often unknown and sometimes haunting. All of our lives started in a land that is on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. There are some adoptees who complete their birth search and find that they are actually twins. Others who have found out they are triplets, with each one sent to a different country. And still others never know their origin story. Their beginning is according to their adoption file, sometimes starting on the steps of City Hall, and other times at the train station or police station. Despite what Hollywood likes to portray, there is no right or wrong or one experience as an adoptee. Some never search for their birth families. Others choose to tattoo their name from their adoption records on themselves as a way to ground and mark the only beginning that they know. Each of our stories are unique, with more diversity than likely there are stars in the sky. What we all share across our experiences as adoptees are origin stories that are initially told to us by agencies and government officials. And what we sometimes find is that those origin stories are not the truth, that we have assumed them to be all of our lives. And today, I'm so pleased for us to hear from Xinran and have a peek into some of the voices and birth mothers and the people behind the stories that we're told on our adoption paperwork. Xinran was born in Beijing in 1958. From 1989 to 1997, she worked as a radio presenter and journalist, hosting the program Words in the Night Breeze, in which she invited women to call in and share their life stories. Xinran not only talked to these women on the radio, she went to them and accumulated material from the thousands of women she interviewed. In 1997, she traveled to London, where she now lives. It is here that Xinran was able to write these stories down for the first time. She is also a distinguished international best-selling author, having penned numerous books in her career, including The Good Woman of China in 2002, which is now translated in over 30 languages and is an international bestseller, Sky Burial, published in 2004, a collection of Xinran's Guardian's columns from 2003 to 2005, What the Chinese Don't Eat was published in 2006, Miss Chopsticks was published in 2007, China Witness, Voices from a Silent Generation in 2008, and a book for adoptive families, Mother's Bridge of Love in 2007, which came in third on Time magazine's list for top 10 children's books in 2007. Message from an Unknown Chinese Mother, Stories of Loss and Love was originally published in 2010. It's hard to believe that Xinran has time, but in August of 2004, she established the Mother's Bridge of Love, MBL. MBL reaches out to Chinese children in all corners of the world by creating a bridge of understanding between China and the West. MBL ultimately wants to help bridge the huge poverty gap which still exists in many parts of China. And it turns out that this year is MBL's 20th anniversary. Xinran often advises Western media, including the BBC and Sky, about Western relations with China and makes frequent television and radio appearances. Now we're going to go through a bit of the historical context for Chinese adoptees here in Canada, as well as one-child policy in Canada, and then population and birth trends overall. We had trimmed this out in the interest of time for the actual event that was hosted live, but did wish to include it in this online version for anybody who might be interested. The source content are from a number of different websites. If you are curious about that list, feel free to reach out at the Asian Adoptees of Canada.ca. So as far as some of the historical context, Canada adopted 2,127 children from abroad in 2009. So from 2009 to 2010, about 10 years, international adoptions represented less than 1% of Canada's total immigration. During that period, annual levels ranged from 1,500 to 2,200 children, so a total of about 21,000 children. About 8,000 of these were international adoptions specifically from China. After peaking at 53% of Canada's international adoptions in 2005, China still remains the primary source as a sending country. And specifically in 2009, China accounted to closer to 22% of Canada's international adoptions. Other countries included the US, Ethiopia, Vietnam, and Haiti. In 2008, I thought this was pretty interesting, Canada introduced an additional process that grants Canadian citizenship to internationally adopted children at the time of entry into Canada. Versus for myself, my parents had to apply for it. So this just shows a bit of a graph here, which is kind of a nice visual as far as what some of the trends were. And then as a very brief history of the one-child policy, which has a large historical context and other implications, this is a very brief overview just to have a bit of a baseline for everybody. So the government's population planning initiative was legislated in 1979 towards the end of the year. It was regulated as implemented in 1980 and written into the Constitution 2 years later in 82. It continued until 2015, restricting families to a single child, which is the one-child policy. In 2015, the government raised the limit to two children, and then in May of 2021, 3 children, and then in July, it removed all limits shortly after actually implementing financial incentives to encourage individuals to have additional children. This I just thought was a nice kind of visual as far as the timeline. You can see up until 2015, which is when some pretty significant changes happened. So as far as implementation, the one-child policy was handled at the national level by the National Population and Family Planning Commission. At the provincial and local levels, it's specialized by specialized commissions. Officials used persuasive propaganda campaigns to promote the program and encourage compliance. How strictly it was enforced varied by region, also the period and social status. In some cases, women were forced to use contraception, received abortions, and underwent sterilization. So families who violated this policy received large fines and other penalties. This I thought was a pretty interesting graph. It shows the timeline here from the 1900s to 2020. The population trend has continued to increase, but importantly, the growth rate has not. The growth rate has declined. And what does this mean? And so you can see out of interest, these are some of China's most populous cities, which I thought was also pretty interesting. But importantly, the fertility rate has had a deep decline. And interestingly, it was already declining before the one-child policy was formally implemented. You can see here, but it has continued to decline very notably. So importantly, you can see here, the OECD says fertility rates in order to have sustain a population must be 2.1 children per woman in order to ensure a broadly stable population. But you can see here, China's population, their fertility rate is much below that, right? This is 2 here, and it's much below it. And so we can look to then, how else can you make up for a population that doesn't have a high fertility rate or enough to sustain itself? You look to immigration. How else do you get people in, right? And Canada is certainly very familiar with that, which we'll get to. So China and immigration numbers. According to the census in 2020 for China's census, China has 1,430,695 immigrants divided between foreign nationals and residents living in these 3 countries, Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. As of 2023, there are around 12,000 foreigners granted permanent residency in China. That 12,000 for a country that's over a billion is not a very large percentage, right? Versus Canada. Canada is also very familiar with this challenge with population growth or even sustaining a population. Notably, as of 2023, so last year, we just hit 40 million. I mean, I do think it's pretty amusing that Canada has 40 million, which was a landmark for our population, and China has over a billion. But anyways, so Canada's population has also continued to grow, which has been interesting because, as our Stats Canada has recorded, our fertility rate as of reporting for this January in 2024, it's at an all-time low at 1.33. And if you remember, according to the OECD, you need to have a population to sustain itself. It needs to be at least 2.1 children. So Canada is, for fertility, is much below that. And so what does Canada do? Canada's population, as a broad overview, we're 37th by population, so 0.5% of the world's population, and the second largest for landmass. But importantly, for our population, we rely heavily on annual immigration, which adoptees, we are a part of that population. So we are a part of the group of immigrants. And so each year we have, according to Stats Citizenship and Immigration, around 500,000 new immigrants. I mean, that number has changed quite a bit in the last recent years, but in general, we have 500,000 immigrants, which is one of the highest per population for any country in the world. And as of 2022, there were more than 8 million immigrants with permanent residency living in Canada, roughly 20% of the total population in Canada. So you can see this here, right? So these are our Canada's current population. So we grew a lot in the last couple of years. This is 2021 up to 2023. So that's a very brief overview as far as Canada's population, China's population are both of our trends. And as a country, Canada has continued to increase our population because we rely so heavily on immigration. We are part of Canada who are immigrants, a very specific niche group of immigrants, but we are part of Canada's immigration. I'm so excited for you to hear from Xinran and hear her amazing words and insights.
And after thank you very much, and I want to have a very quick repeat about MBL. And in 20 years' time, we set up the 3 teams. One is called website team, social media, and one is a China Volunteer Center. And also another one is an international culture event in London. All of the 3 teams, we are working 3 bridges. One is build up the better understanding between the China and the West, because China is a very fast moving country. Even for Chinese, we're very difficult to understand, to follow those quick changes. And also we try to help poor children in west part of China and for the books, toys, and daily life support. Then we have a very big team, I think over a few hundred volunteers working for helping adoptive families. My personal travel more than 20 countries, because from our research, we discovered there are about 100,000 Chinese adoptees adopted by 27 countries, include Iceland had 2 families as well. This is by the 2016 this research. So we trying to do and for three major work for adoptive families. One is help you analyze your adoption documents. Through our 20 years working, we discovered lots of documents not properly, and some are even fake. So based on that kind of information, will be very difficult for adoptive family to trace, to how do you say, to search your birth, your adoptees' birth parents. This is one thing. And secondly, we help adoptees, adoptive family when you are travel in China. And 20 years ago, I was a personal warning and told many families and not to go to the countryside until your daughters, your adoptees, after how do you say, university or become adults, because the living condition or understanding between the Chinese in the countryside and the Westerners is still quite difficult. So many people be heard by Chinese reacting. Yeah, and I got so many stories. To me, this is why I never change my email address, because I know so many friends want to talk to me and contact the details. And the last things we help adoptees to do is we set up this project called Book for Kids, because we want to, through this kind of project, to help adoptive families, to help local village schools or village children to get the better education or chance to be educated, to read books or improve their living condition as well. And then meanwhile, because this kind of local network, they can help families to find out any information or right direction to search their birth parents, or help adoptees to understand why you have this kind of unique lives. So this is for MBL's doing my personal, except my still research on this issue. And partly when China policy, partly is Chinese culture, and is how do you say, and China development or changing so fast. So many people had lots of questions for my research. So this is, I'm here. And also as a 20 years, how do you say, anniversary gift, we will set up, MBL will set up dialogue about adoption from this year, and 4 times a year, like a quarter year. So next one will be June. Anyone want to set up or join this dialogue, you can apply or send email to us. But why we want to do that? Because in last 20 years, we realize from China Adoption Center and from local orphanages, they gave this kind of adoption to many countries, but from, sorry about my English. No, they try to separate the family, siblings, even twins, to different families, to different countries. So you might watch this documentary from BBC. I was involved in this. So the twins between America and Denmark, and also the twins between the Norwegian and America. So we try to set up the dialogue and also help adoptees. Possibly you can come join this conversation online and discover possibly someone come from same region or same village or even same family, siblings. So that is we are waiting to do. Oh, I have so much want to talk. Anyway, we can talk later. So I will give this, back to our host. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, Xinran, thank you so much. You have had such an incredible career spanning so many locations and cities and traveled like all throughout China. So I know that everybody here feels so lucky to be able to have this opportunity to chat, learn from you, and really these experiences. I mean, I think in reading this book, I'll be honest, I had to take some breaks in reading it because it was just so heartbreaking in hearing these stories and just really understanding the faces in these people that, you know, I think a lot of adoptees we think about, right? And the constellation of all of these people who have been a part of our adoption journey, who we may or may not ever meet, from, you know, people who have intersected kind of directly or indirectly, obviously our birth mothers, but other folks as well who have been a part of this journey. And so you being able to share it so exquisitely within your book is just such truly an honor and such a gem to be able to see a window into that. So we had for folks who had been able to RSVP a little bit earlier, we had invited individuals to share questions in advance. We received a great number of questions, which is amazing, and so we will get into them now. The only thing I will make note, just because I know that sometimes it can be there can be a really in-depth discussion that can ensue. I do want to try and get through as many questions as we can while still balancing out the ability to go in depth. So we'll try to limit the questions and answers, the answers to each question to around 4 minutes or so. I have a timer here on my screen, so I will just make a noise or raise my hand, and we'll just be able to make sure that we get through as many questions. And importantly, to be fair to the folks who were interested in the birth search portion, to make sure that we have time to answer questions around the birth search as well at the end. So that is just simply kind of logistically as a heads up for folks. It's always tough to be the timer. It is nothing personal, and so I just like to give people a heads up at the beginning. So the first questions that we have are for yourself, Xinran, and specifically, you know, in general, do you know if birth mothers usually believe that their lost daughters are doing well somewhere?
And every time I join this kind of online events or even personal meeting with adoptive family or adoptees, I become so emotional. The reason is I don't feel it's me. I feel that I'm a part of the mothers who gave up or given their daughters away. Because I have met so many Chinese mothers, and some are along the River Yangtze, and some are by the River Yellow, and in the mountains in the west of China, or even in Shanghai. Yeah, I met so many of them. To be honestly, during my radio show, I started from 1980. At that time, actually from 88, the training. And I didn't know this situation. But as a part of Chinese culture, you know, and we always believe a boy is the family trees and the girls always out of the family network when they married someone. And also, and for many area, they have a local traditional customs to bend or kill the baby girls when they have a first child is the boy. First child is the girl. They're waiting for the boy. So this is why you can see many Chinese families. They have 4 or 5 sisters, and the last one was the young brother. So this partly is our culture, and. During my research on that, at the beginning, I didn't realize how serious it is. And also, I never really heard about the adoption until my first book tour in America. And in New York, I was very surprised. So many parents took their children to me, and the baby girls, and between the age only half years old or 1 year old in 2002, told me that they adopted from China. I never really know that. And afterwards, it took me another 2 years to realize, not just in America, in Australia, and in many European countries, unadopted Chinese children. So then I got back to my research and especially want to find out why this happened, how this happened, and what's going on. So I did interview, I turned my attention from 2004. and to the local, not just authorities, orphanages, and policemen, and also from a railway station and railway people working on that as well. Because I found something very interesting is lots of adoptees is come from the cities, places along the railway, and also in 2 seasons, and after Spring Festival and the Autumn Festival as well, and the Moon Festival. So when I started digging this research, I met so many moving, how do you say? I had so many moving experience. Like once I was in Guangzhou, the place called Kaiping. Kaiping just the village outside of the Guangzhou, and in the tradition, the last 200 years, they have a generation by generation. They went to abroad to make some better life, then send the money back. Then they built up a very funny, the building is called Gyolo. So one side is like a castle, Western castle, but outside you will see it's a traditional, it's kind of defense system, that kind of building. So I never forgot this mother I met. And she saw me with my husband, English husband. So she said to me quietly, say, do you know some foreigners outside China? I said, of course I know. Now I have a home in London. Then she said, have you seen any bigger nose? Okay, bigger nose with our Chinese children. I said, yes, I knew that. Then she said, oh my God, that must be very scary to our daughter, to our baby. I said, what do you mean, very scary? Then she said, you know, the face is so different, the sounds are so different. Please tell those bigger nose mothers, hold the baby on the left arm. Doesn't matter which color they are, which country they come from. We have the same heart beating. The baby will comfortable or feel safe. I had so many this kind of stories, and also I always hold something during my travel. So all the little things come from birth mothers. Oh. Some little stones from a river, and some leaves from trees, and some tiny things, even just a paper heart. It's very moving. Yes, I met so many birth mother, particularly mother. Men always very silent, so didn't want to talk very much about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Jenna, I can only imagine, carrying all these stories and feeling like the weight and the sorrow of these women. And I think it truly is a gift that you've been able to hear these stories and then translate them into such beautiful text for us to be able to hear and understand. And if it were not for you to be able to capture these stories, like we in the rest of the world, we would never know. And I think that's part of the beauty of your writing and writing in general is to be able to share our narratives globally. So thank you so much for sharing. And the second question that we have is, with your insights, what barriers for families to search for their lost children do you think there currently are?
Okay, let me try to make it clear. The question is, how about adoptees or adoptive family to to search their birth parents in China?
Correct. That's my understanding from the writing.
Well, and I think the person talk about in search in China, Julian, and she talk about later, and for me, my experience is in the last 20 years or more than that. I think first of all, you have documents about adoption. So from our research and confirm with the authorities, with the government, with the families, we discovered is 10 documents you should have in the process. So that means when they discover the baby by the policeman, and then they send out the news to the local newspaper for 3 months, no one, or 3 weeks. and then no one come for the baby. So they send the baby to orphanage, then start a health check, and come to the government authority, the population system. Then they have a record for the babies grow up schedules. And later on, when they start this kind of adoptions, so for each country, you have to apply from your own country after very serious, difficult interviews, at least 3 steps interviews from your local authorities and your adoptive parents. When they pass through this examination, and they can have a code number, and they send the code number to China, then China will ask a request for adoptive families, the parents' photo. Then they very nicely they try to match the photo with the baby girls in their archives. So then finally, if both sides, and agreed and also check, they start adoption process. So this adoption process is not just only controlled by national adoption center in the central government and also in the local as well. Yeah, so local got this kind of request. So they report how many babies in the orphanage and what kind of babies, they can be adopted. Then they have to fill in the form. This form includes health, and the baby's the daily life, and so orphanage should have a form check, and also local authorities has to check, and all the details, and the hospital has to check. So this should be in 3 months' time before the adoption complete. So you will see many medical records actually is out of the 3 months. That means it's not it. So after all, adoptive family could have to meet their baby first time. Then they have this sign documents, then apply the passport. Then they can leave the China. So this process is I sent you already. About this, so you can share with any kind of family if they need to know how to check the documents. This is the first step. And the second step, if you want to go China, and I really recommend it, is your age, your children's age above 18. Because you have a very basic independent thinking, or protect yourself, or you understand the situation in China, because we talk about China, no such one China, and a huge gap between the city and the countryside. And also, even China become a superpower and economy, big brother, but in the countryside, we're still very basic condition. And the people have the knowledge or language, the accents. So secondly, I really think you need help, and I don't believe any paid, like a business search. So it's not easy for anyone, because China in the last 40 years, we lost so many villages disappeared. And the cities and the states, and they changed a lot. So lots of basic records disappeared or transferred to another place. If you have a local people support, like MBLs, we have volunteers from universities or colleges, and we have a local policeman, we have a local school help. So that's more, more reasonable and more easy for you. So this is, I would say, this is the second step. And the third one is you need to take time. Sorry,
I would just, you raise a really good point, and I think we will touch upon this deeper, but I want to be fair to some of the other questions that are specifically to you while we have the opportunity to ask more about your experiences. But I think that is all, so important, and I think really interesting to kind of get a more of a sneak peek or a view into kind of the adoption process, pre us arriving, because it is different for all the different countries. So a question that there was specifically, and would love to hear your thoughts, because I think it is really important, is do you think in China that there is or there ever will be room for women and families, speaking of reuniting, to reunite and share traumas and build a forum to connect and search, uh, to search like there are organizations for the West who are adopted for adopted children?
Well, I have to say, 5 years ago, this was much in China. Not many people really know the situation, but now it's getting better and better because of social media and because of so many Chinese and traveling overseas. They saw that, they see that, they heard about this. So there are few organization in China, and then called 宝贝回家 and or organizations in China. But one thing is China still discussing about the charity law, because we treated the charity law as a part of the religion, because the first idea orphanage for China is from this Christian, missionaries, set up this. So this is why in Chinese, lots of people's mind, this is part of this. Even in the government department, this is belong to the religions one. But so many Chinese now try to do some charity work to help adoptive family. Yes, they are quite a lot. If you send the message to MBL's website, or volunteers, they can help you from locals, from the central government. But I would just say more individual, not from authorities, because the recourse, we have to be honestly, and some are from family bandit, but some are come from human trafficking as well. That is true. So in this case, very difficult for Chinese people, even they want to help you. And again, this is why you have to understand the documents first. So inside of China, there's not many people so far really understand how's going on from 1997 to 93. So people is very kind, want to help you. I know there is several organizations to do this as well, but because the recourse is difficult. But I think more people bring the DNA system into that. Yeah. This is, I think, Julia knows better than me, and Red from China, they know as well. So later on, they might help.
Yeah, and I think that's so interesting, right? The evolution of technology and how that has played such a huge part for families to be able to reunite. I think that's been, a phenomenal kind of transition and difference from what it has been historically. Related to this and kind of expanding on this question, what would you say are your insights for what barriers or for families, or specifically for birth mothers, are there for birth mothers to search for their children? Do you think that there currently are?
Sorry about that. I told you before, I got the COVID. I lost my hearing quite a lot. Could you, repeat the question again?
Not
question.
Yes. So, what insights for yourself, what insights do you have that you feel that maybe birth families or birth mothers, and what challenges do you think that they face in barriers in trying to search for their birth family, their daughters?
I think it was a big challenge for birth mothers as well, because I always say, if you have life today, you should thank, or you feel grateful about this, because according to Chinese government record published 2015 and October, and about I think 40 million men more than women. So that means where is the 40 million baby girls? So everybody worry about the men's wives, how do they set up the families? But my question is, where are those missing girls, the baby girls? So when I talk to the birth parents, the mothers who abandoned children, I think it's a very different situation. One big group was scared, affair, because they hide their baby girls, they gave away, and against the one-child policy. So the pregnancy was break the one-child policy already, and then they wanted the baby boy, or they didn't want to cure their baby girls. They asked people to, to help or to leave the baby daughter in front of the police station or hospital or orphanage. This is quite often, and in the cities, in the hotel, in front of hotels. So those mothers is very, very brave because they're very dangerous under the policy. And another group, I would say, because the tradition beliefs. So the midwife, you read this chapter from my books, the midwife was paid if the baby boy is the means, the part of the family. But if the baby girl, they want the midwife to do their homework, the housework, that means, to help them to get rid of the baby girls. So those kind of family, normally they hide their babies from their own family because the old family elders generation, they want the boys. So that is the group. Another group from my research or our team research is young students. When China opened in the 1980s, lots of young people adopted a Western sexual relationship, this kind of lifestyles. But China brought this kind of sexual education probably is from 2003. So still it's very hard for, we have over 665 cities. And in many cities, except include big city, capital cities as well. And so many young women, they had either abortion or they gave the baby away. So that is the hidden part. So birth mothers, from my research, this three part is the main source. Yeah. It's this three parts. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, it's always so heartbreaking to hear these different stories, right? And understanding, I think as adoptees, kind of the broader context that our birth mothers are faced with. It truly is an impossible situation and challenge that they are tasked with. And it really is, something that really stood out as one of the many stats that you shared in your book is the suicide rate for women in China is just so disproportionately high. And I feel that there is so much pressure placed on the women of China, right, in so many different regards, but especially in this impossible challenge, because biologically it's not up to women what gender we birth, right? That is up to the man's side. And it is really important, I think, for all of us to really understand that it's not, I think sometimes when we think about birth family or birth search, it can be like, why did my mom, why did she have this really challenging decision? But it really wasn't just our mothers in this whole scenario, but it's this entire system and structure that's been put in place. And China, I think, is so unique, kind of as you mentioned, as a country and as a government, right? As a country and historically, there's this tradition of having a preference for men over women. And it goes down to the economics as well. In your introduction, you talk about how there's more land that's actually given and awarded for families that have women, that have girls over boys. And you can't argue with the economics or power and land transfer and opportunities that would come with that to perpetuate this preference for boys over girls. And you're right, like I think social policy is so important, whether it's, as you mentioned, the young women or the young girls who have children. And some of them, as we read in your beautiful book, they just really didn't understand the consequences. I think education that we have publicly now is seems like a standard or a norm. Certainly, I'd say in Canada, the U.S. I don't know about in Norway or in elsewhere, but I would assume so. And that we understand the consequences of a man and a woman coming together and what can very reasonably happen, especially if you're very young and of that age. Then that understanding just really, it was just this like incredible naivete that so many of these women had in what the consequences could be. And I feel like what's so helpful for adoptees and adoptees certainly that I've known is understanding that it is this larger context that all of us are navigating within, and it's not the single decision. And often, if it was up to the single decision of our birth mothers, they wouldn't have made this decision. But it's the collective decision and the environment that they are within. So not only within their immediate family, so the pressure possibly that they're experiencing from their husbands, from their mother-in-laws, from their own families, but also from society at large, right? If there's a government that's literally saying, we will reward you financially by having a boy, or you will have greater status, et cetera, et cetera. That is so much pressure that is placed on these women. And also the midwives. Like I think about, we had also last year watched, One Child Nation, and the stories of midwives and, all the things that they also endured, I think are really very real as well, and really, really challenging. So, Xinran, thank you so much for kind of sharing that perspective. And I think it's so important to hear that and really knowing that there are so many different added contexts that we are all a part of, that long preceded any of us and our entry into the world, and that will continue to follow us long after, whenever our last day and our last breath is. So another question that was asked, just speaking of the many different voices that you have heard and captured in your book, was, somebody asked, somebody said, Xinran, all of your stories were so powerful, and I could not agree more. Thank you for writing this book. It changed the way I look at my adoption and what I could have been and how I could have ended up where I am today. The one question that this person wondered was, in the Bonds of Love and Leaves and Stones, were you able to reconnect with either the mother or the daughters, or I'd say, your foster daughter, or really any of the stories for the women that you had captured? I guess, were you able to kind of reconnect with anybody that you spoke to?
Well, could you repeat your question again? Is there any women are written in the book have I keep the contact with them? Yeah?
It was a very long question. So that was a much better synopsis. Thank you so much.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, and I want to add a little bit on your comments about adoption. Adoption is a taboo in our human society. This is a part of the United Nations nation want to do it after Second World War. They tried very hard when they set up 1945 to open this adoption, because during the war, and so many children being abandoned and also up from the war zones. But this is was very hard until 2002. Yeah, so I have been involved in this, and not just the Asia or China. Is like in Denmark, so many South Korean adoptees, and Greece as well, because Korean War. And if you go to French, yeah, and they adopted quite numbers from Vietnam. Yeah, and also because this kind of war, happened, and there's a hidden history in UK with Australia, because they have a wide Australia policy. So they pick up the children from a poor family, sent to Australia. Then later on, they said to the children, say, oh, your family is gone. But when I was in Australia, I always met people say, they want to open this conversation, where they come from, why no one care about this, why government lie to them. So also this is the reason we want to open this dialogue about adoption. Asia is the top of the adoption system, and the numbers very big. I was very surprised when I was in Norway, Oslo last year, 2023, and we had a conference with the authorities working on it, and some children adopted from Japan and Taiwan. I didn't know that. So this kind, I think, the culture things, or Singapore as well, is not just a poor part of the China or poor part of the countries. I think that mainly is about the women and the men. We still haven't got this equal society today. Yeah, so women still left behind. Like a program I involved, like a long lost family. I don't know, have any of you to watch it? And this is by BBC, by ITV, by American, Australia, and many countries adopted this television series. It's help people to find the birth parents. Yeah, and that is started, and I think it's 10, 15 years ago. So yes, I did met some families, but very rare MBL succeed and help them to find birth parents. We have some lovely story. Like from New Zealand. Yeah, the twins, the only twins we discovered from the 160,000 young girls adoptees. And this is Xue and Mei. Yeah, they adopted by family. Mother is British, father is New Zealand. They're in Auckland now. So when they come to China, ask for the help. When I met Xue and Mei, they're only 2 or 3 years old. Now they are in their 20s, the beautiful daughters. And their mother come to us. So MBL Volunteer Center in China, and Julian's team helped them find their birth parents from Sichuan through Book for Kids project. We try to help the school. Then school were very touched to say, is there anything we can, help you as our return? Then we send the message, say, we have some requests or recalls from adoptees, from adoptive family, and their children from local. Is there any, gossip or information there? Because no such authorities record, and lots of the orphanages disappeared. Then this village said, oh, we can, send the message out. Then later on, when the family tried to send the books back to the school, then the birth parents was waiting for them at the front, wow, on the road in front of the village. So it's a very moving story. And so that later on, the family sent me videos and the photos. I still have quite a lot. I have so many letters or photos from adoptive families. Sometimes I carried for the Chinese mothers as well. Yes, I did. But many mothers, I think they're a bit scared. They feel guilty. Yeah. But now China, the social media, we can see the Chinese WeChat, you can see quite numbers of the little stories come out almost every day now. Yeah. It's about the foreign family adopted Chinese girls. Very moving. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's an incredible story for them to have been able to meet. And I think that, with our global and connected world, whether it's through DNA testing or through accessibility like chat, like WeChat, etc., I'm hopeful that there will be more opportunities for folks who are interested in doing a birth search and reuniting to be able to do so. To that, somebody had also asked, of the women and the people you spoke to, how old were the mothers on average? And they're just asking because they're wondering how quickly they should possibly start their birth search.
Well, this when you talk about the birth mothers, the first country adopt Chinese children is America. Mm-hmm. They start from 1991. They started from 1991. But in that time, China is not open adoption yet. Actually, China opened this is the end of the 92 to 93, really opened. So some, I think 20 or more than that, adoptees adopted in 1991, and they had funny passports. I don't know how they get out from China, and I think maybe it's someone helped them from Guangzhou. Most of them is they adopted out of China from Guangzhou airport called Baiyun Airport. This is from our research. Then later on was Canada, Australia, New Zealand, English countries, and Canada. Yeah. So in this way is the age, so adoptees age now is about the late 20s to early 40s in those countries. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Then Europeans much later, and France and Holland is a bit early, and Denmark. Then is Norwegian family, Sweden family. Then very late was Spanish. Spanish family, they adopted lots of the Chinese children is after 2012. Yeah, and very interesting, they adopted some Chinese boys, healthy boys as well, and mainly come from Hebei. Yeah, we did a research on that as well. So all the way is by 2016. So by the 2016, adoption is the number is dropped down. And so many people question why this happened. Actually, is the orphanage along the East Coast almost empty. So the adoption moved to the middle. So on the west of like Henan, Hubei, or Jiangxi, so that is much later, young age. Yeah. So it's hard to see the mothers how old. Like the American families contact me 2022 because they have adoption process finished by 2019. Then COVID, they couldn't get there. So they asked MBL for the help. I wrote to the adoption center in China, and they want to pay this, send the baby to Hong Kong. They can pick up the baby from Hong Kong because China was locked down. So they refused. So they start pick up the baby from early 2023. Yeah. Last year, and all the way to the June. So in this case, their mother must be very young. So the mother's maybe teenager or 20s. Yeah, very different.
Yeah. And, Xinran, I think that you raised such an important point is that, all of our birth mothers, they could be at any stage or age of their lives. And the reality is that there are so many different possible scenarios that could have resulted in, this really impossible, challenging question that they were faced with. So I think for some women, they would have been in their teens, like possibly a teen pregnancy for whatever reason. But other women and other birth mothers, they may have been a bit older. So I think that it is hard for us to, as adoptees, to speculate and kind of think about, our origin story and who our birth mothers may have been, but understanding that all of them, regardless, are faced with a really challenging, kind of social context that we had talked about before, and with a very personal decision and challenge that often they may not have wanted to make themselves. I think a common theme with all of the stories that you shared so beautifully in your book is that they really didn't feel like they had a choice. And that, I think, is a really tough and, kind of foreign concept in some ways for a lot of us in, I'd say Canada and the US, who feel that choice is something that we really value, right? To have autonomy, to be able to decide anything from, what you want to have for breakfast, or what you study in university, or what your career is, or where you work. Choice is something that we are really accustomed to and honestly take for granted, right? In a lot of ways. But I think for us to understand that whatever age our birth mothers may have been, and from whatever country, they have in many times don't have a choice or don't feel that they have a choice.
No.
Or I think very realistically, in the society and culture and city and family that they are in, they really do not, and this, I think that is a helpful understanding to know that, what we assume to be true in having volition and being able to decide kind of our direction and where we go in life is not a luxury or a privilege that oftentimes our birth mothers may not have had. And so regardless of what age they are, because I think sometimes we can feel that, if they're a teen pregnancy, it's, it makes it harder because they have less of a choice. But that really is within our context and understanding of guardianship here in Canada, right? So our idea of guardianship is that if you're younger, you defer guardianship to to your parents, right? As the laws, etc., are kind of set forth like that. And so
absolutely, yeah.
What I think is really helpful to understand is that that concept of guardianship is not the same in China, and in some ways it's like very much not the same, as in it's really deferred to other people within the family kind of structure and system hierarchy. And how the salience and how important family structure and hierarchy is in China is, I think, really shocking to a lot of people within North America. And I think that's like a really kind of big adjustment to understand and to conceive of. So I think that's, you really do highlight that range of stories and women who do have this really impossible decision to make, which often is not ours. And so moving on, I think this is a question as far as for you and your experience in writing this book. Are you happy with the results of the publication, we'll say, of this specific book, versus because you have written so many? And so are you happy with the publication and kind of the results so far? And what do you still wish to accomplish?
Thank you for these questions. Actually, when I published this book, I still remember I had a television and I have a radio interview in America, and they said the first person attacked me was from Canada. The Chinese from Canada, they said, we never abandoned Chinese daughters. We never abandoned baby girls. Xinran just tried to please to the Westerners. So when the journalists asked me this question, how do you react to this question? I said, I don't need to react because the fact is there. And the Western family with the Chinese baby girls, you can see everywhere in 20 countries. Is one thing. And secondly, for me, I think we should help those adoptees and their mothers. I'm so glad you mentioned about this, because the mothers who abandoned the daughters, they are victims as well. Mm-hmm. They are part of us. They need help. They were very brave, hide and challenge the policy, challenge the tradition, challenge the family abuse to keep the baby girl alive. Afterwards, big in their heart every day, and scared as well. So this is why when we build up this kind of conversation, when we talk about this, like you just mentioned, I think it's a great help for those Chinese women. We can help them to hear the voices, and they've been cared, they've been think of, and they've been loved, not to feel guilty, not to feel this kind of lonely in their life. So this is why when we set up this kind of dialogue, it's my personal, I really want more and more Chinese mothers come listen to hear. No such black or white, right or wrong. Life is changing, times are changing. Your daughters grew up, and they understand this. So I think that part's very important. And for myself, I can see, and this book become more and more, recognizable and acceptable by lots of adoptive families and by the societies as well. When the BBC, CNN, and Discovery come to me, talk about these adoptions, And I always say to them, this kind, not just for adoptees, it's for the whole society. We need to understand this. Life is changing, and we learned from the past. We try to avoid to have the same mistakes, but people need to be educated. Not just those mothers, the whole society. We should support them to understand them, to give them chance to be loved, to be cared.
Yeah.
That is I feel from this book. I got so many letters. I wish I can show you. It's boxes of letters from adopted families, from family neighbors, tell me the very personal story. That is, I found I did right good homework.
It's beautiful, more than good and right. It's like, it's truly stunning. And to that, that really feeds into this next question that folks have. This is around the topic of birth search and family and reunion. Somebody had asked, as an adoptee, how can people best support this kind of the search, and for adoptee organizations, how can we help support individuals who are doing this birth search? So maybe for MBL, how are you supporting adoptees in the birth search process?
Well, MBL, we only have 4 staff volunteer being qualified, because this is include family law and include confidential for the personal information, and also we have this connection with doctors like bone reading and the face reading, and because even some adoptees adopted from South China, but you can read from this kind of bones reading or face reading. They come from Northwest or Northeast China, some Mongolia or some Tibetan. Yeah, so that kind of personal information is confidential for us. Not all the volunteers can do that. So we're only 4, include Julia, and me, another 2, one is in France as well. So we have to practice this. And then we have a very close network with the local. Yeah. Local schools, local policemen, local postmen before, but not such a postman anymore. And because this is the online system, changed. Yeah. So this is MBL have been doing in 20 years time. Yeah. We try to actually, it's not a one family to be, linked or connected. It's more important. It's open this conversation, open this topic in the society, help those Chinese mothers, to understand the situation and not be alone and not be looked down or treated, abused. And so they can strong enough, to arms or the heart to their abandoned baby daughters. That's, I think, is very important. This is what we're trying to do. And I've been doing almost 20 years.
Well, that's amazing. And, the opportunity to support adoptees that MBL provides in their birth search and reunion and just visiting China is truly a huge asset. I think that part of it is that it can seem, China and being abroad, it can seem like very daunting and how far away it is. So I would encourage anybody on the Zoom who does have questions and is curious about learning more about returning to China or doing a birth search to reach out to MBL and her team. Another question as far as related to birth search, that folks have asked is, do you have tips on how to deal with the grief that comes with not finding a biological family despite efforts?
Well, it's very, very hard. And even myself, I had experience as well, From the book, that I used to not adopted, look after the baby girl when my son was half years old. And that was, 1989 when I discovered this baby girl in the hospital. The mother died by giving the birth, and the father is a doctor, committed suicide afterwards, followed the wife. So this little girl, when they told me the story in the winter, so I'm curious to see the baby girl. Then immediately the baby girl hold my fingers. I just thought, okay, what is? So I asked her, can I look after this baby? Then anyway, I can't talk. I will start crying. And then later on, and my radio station said, you have to give up this baby. Otherwise, you break the rules, not just you lose the job, and the head of the station will lose the job as well. Yeah. So that time, 1989, the one child policy, very serious. But what they did is I went to the business trip. When I come back, this girl was taken away. And I still remember she had this like a mark on her face, like a one drop of the water, the mark. So I'm still looking for her. And every time I went America, even now, when I met you or anywhere, I try to see and match the age and try to see. It's very, very hard. But also, from another side, we say, maybe it's kind of, lesson to help us to understand other people's suffering. And also help us to understand that we don't want any war. We have to help the poor, or we have to open the society to give equal speak and rights to people, so people can share and fight for their own rights and their own families. So without this kind of experience, I wouldn't become who I am today. No. I think I have learned so much from my life experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel that we are so fortunate and the beneficiaries of that experience. And, I think a big part of the whole adoption process, kind of the machine, certainly around the one-child policy, is obviously the government. And this next question is, do you think the Chinese government is more open to adoptees searching for their birth families?
I think it's the hope there. It's happening now. It's happening now. It's more people talking about it. I'm still lecture in some universities, and I can see from the Chinese students, they start thinking about it or they heard something about it. So that is a very good side for that. And so many Chinese social media and talk about, how lucky those baby girls be adopted by foreigners, had the best education, had the best, the siblings or families surroundings, the love, hug. So they started, I think particularly last 3 years, I would say. And then more and more news, videos, image stories come out. Yeah. Actually, at the moment, our website think about this. If they can put this kind of family videos on or somewhere, so we like to adopt this or to publish for them, transport them. So more and more people can know this kind of story network, because also help adoptees to find their relatives, from other countries or from other cities or from China as well. So yes, more. It is definitely is a life and a hope there, and it's already.
Yeah. And I think, what's always important is kind of the historic context, which we've spent some time, I think, going in depth about. And this question is, do you feel, people from China are ashamed about the one-child policy? And, do you feel that sometimes maybe that shame has resulted in people being, making it harder for adoptees to find their birth parents?
Well, I always say, you can't see the one side. You can't comment this on the one side of the, on the view, because, okay, let's put it in this way. In the good side, as a government, Chinese government say, okay, 400 million population stopped, which is a big gift to the planet. Yeah, during the one-child policy from 1979 all the way to the 2015. Yeah, so this is good. And the second, because of this policy, China had a chance to break through from the poor, from poverty, and become economy. Big brothers, yeah. And the third one, we have to see lots of the girls, because of this policy, they are much more value than before, particularly in the cities. Even some, I remember some foreigners told me, oh, the Chinese women in the Shanghai, in the big cities, they are much powerful than men now. They're not only wear trousers, they hold not a half sky, they hold the whole sky of the family. Anyway, so in this side, it's very good. But another side, I would say, I don't think that China was ready for this policy. Because when you want to persuade people to follow your policy, you need to set up this kind of social care to help a family to come out of this kind of tradition beliefs. Because China, we didn't have a national religions. We didn't have this kind of, state pension system. We all look after by the families all the way. This is part of the tradition and part of the society beliefs. But if you want to carry out this policy, you need to help those families. Like now, so many young people from a one-child policy, they don't want to marry. Like my own niece, she's 45 from a one-child policy. Then I said, why you still not married? You have a lover and almost like 15 years. She said to me, I have 6 elders to look after. Wow. Then he had 6 elders to look after. If I'm married to him, that means they both have to look after 12 elders. Yeah. Then she said, not in the marriage, so I can walk away. But if in the marriage, it's my family duty. So that is kind of, I don't think the government was ready for that until now. And secondly, I think there was women, baby girls, become a victim of this policy. So many of them had no right to live. This is why over 40 million are missing. Yeah. It's not just China and Japan had a missing population. If you analyze the gender, you find the baby girls are far more than males. And it's almost similar happened in Singapore as well. If this is, I was told by the Singapore journalist, they said, if you analyze Singapore family, very strange. First child, many more than half or 60 is the first child is a boy. How could it be? Yeah. So must be have some gender selection there by the technique or something. Yeah. So that is, is more.
Yeah, I think, Xinran, that's such a, so important, right? For policy making as a government, the consequences, second, third, fourth, et cetera, order consequences are so important. And this next question, speaks to that, and I think is really interesting in the context of what we have just talked about and where China is now for birth rate, for growth, et cetera. I mean, there was a census release and they stated they accidentally overestimated their population by 100 million. And this year is the second year consecutively where there has been a decrease in population. But the question asked actually in the chat was, what are your thoughts on modern China and their two-child policy that they have now, or multiple child policy that is now being promoted?
I think I would say more than two-child policy, put two-children policy. The policies, the end announced by the government was October 2015. Yeah. So by 2016, you see from many, actually the policy stopped first by Henan and Shanghai before the government one. And later on, then from 2017, the government started encouraging people to have 2 children already. Yeah, but now you can see they encourage families has many children as you can. They start, kind of find a slogan, say, good family, bigger family, more children for the, nice future or blah, blah. So that changed again, without enough the society helps, because for many young people, it would be difficult to bring up more than one child because education becomes so expensive, and the elders in the family that look after, and the health system become hospital becomes so expensive as well, and also for this kind of nurse school and primary school, all the schools. Lots of the housework or homework for the parents, and the parents still have to work hard for the mortgage of the house and the car and the lives. So this is why made lots of the city population, young population, and they don't want to marry, they don't want the children. More and more people choose like that, but still have nearly 70% of the population is come from countryside. They still believe this kind of traditional beliefs. Big family will have is a part of the treasure or wealth for the future. Yeah. So I don't know. The government at the moment really want to people have a young couple. Even in the many capital cities, they register your age. Yeah, for the government to register your age. If you are in this age, you can produce the babies. They encourage you. But for my personal view about this, I think it's very important is for government to set up a policy how to support young couple, and from their job, and also from society support, and from tax cut, and from reduce this kind of education fees, or they have to do this, otherwise it's very hard for young people.
Yeah, and I think that's so important to consider, like all of the different contexts that individuals are faced with. And I did want to transition to the latter portion of our session today, which is around kind of birth search and returning to China as an adoptee, because I feel like returning to your homeland as an adoptee is always quite different. And so, this is for yourself, Xinran, or your whole MBL team, but what would you recommend to do to prepare as an adoptee to visit China, and also to continue searching while there? So maybe if they have an extended stay, what could they do to continue their search?
Well, I always said the same things, and I still believe that. Take at least 3 steps to do that. The first of all, go to China to see and walk around and travel around between the city and the countryside to understand this roots culture first. Yeah, and not jump in to any conclusion or conclusion or any end result, to see the country first and to analyze it, to learn. And then secondly, you build up your local network through MBL support or your friends' support. So when people treat you as they are local friends or like relatives or something, they will help you to reach, to get direction to do that. And then third step is through this kind of connection, yeah, and based on this trust, and also based on the enough knowledge, then you start this kind of proper research. Because China, such a big country, is like a whole size of Europe. Yeah. And people speak very different dialogues, and also people has a very different view on adoptions. Yeah. A very, very different view between the city and the countryside. So you need to understand the situation first, then build up local, your friends or second, then through their help and advice and to get your proper research. This is my advice, personal thoughts. Yeah.
That's so helpful and also kind of relates to this next question that we have, which is how do locals usually react to adoptees going back to China and doing a birth search?
Well, again, this depends on where they are. Okay, if you go to Shanghai, Beijing, these kind of modern cities, or like a capital cities, Chinese we say that 省会. Yeah, you see people had a more understanding and warm, nice. But if you go to the countryside, because the language barriers and because the people still, couldn't understand. If you are Chinese back and walk around in the street or village, you can't speak Chinese. You speak a foreign language, and for them, they feel very strange. I have a story from America group. Yeah. And they huge group, they went to China one by one. And some of them said to me, they are deep hurt by that because the village people swear on them. And they couldn't understand why. So they asked me why. So first question I asked them, could you speak Chinese with them? They said no. And the second, what did you wear? And they said, oh, we wear very short shorts and topless, I said that for village people. They found that you are not a traditional Chinese, you break this tradition already. They found that you are not good for something. So this is why you need to take a time to, but this is a different reaction. I think better now than before, but still in the countryside, it could be difficult. In the countryside. So this is why I said to you, you travel with the local context, and to understand that later on, you can, go to the deep villages.
And that's such a great point, and really understanding kind of the local context and how important that is in everything, not only in language, but also just in what you wear and how different that can be kind of across different locations, across how vast China is, because it is a massive country, similar to Canada, but obviously much more populous. And this is, another question, right? So is there a way to get closer to my roots other than just being a tourist when I am visiting China?
Okay, contacts with our volunteer center in China. Julia is in charge. I don't know, Julia is still there in the early morning, 5 o'clock. And Julia has doing this. I've been doing this over years. So she has the team and also she has the program, how to do it one by one. She's very experienced already. And she used to be, and still do, is a travel agent. So this is why we have lots of, she's working more than 20 countries as well. And this is why the volunteers and adoptive families feel very easy to work with her. The in China group by group. Julian?
Yes.
Okay. So if any adoptees want to come to China, adoptive family, and how they contact with you or how to do that?
Hello, I'm sorry, my computer camera is broken. I don't know why. Maybe because of bad weather. Now, I'm based in China, Nanjing. Today is -6 degrees. So, anyway, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. Thank you for joining us from all the world. I'm Julia. I'm the volunteer of Mother's Bridge of Life charity. And I'm in charge of the volunteer center in China. And MBL has collaborated with different organizations from all over the world to carry out Books for Kids project. It is we say B4K. In order to build up MBL International Children's Library in poor villages and orphanages in China. We also provided assistance, advice, and education activities to families around the world. We provided medical treatment support to disabled orphans and also supported a number of disaster relief and education projects in China. So far, we set up 28 children's libraries in China since MBL was set up in 2004. And here, the MBL Volunteer Center, we are not only encouraging more Chinese schools, families, and college students to join our charity programs, offer yearly Chinese volunteer training, but also we regularly travel to rural China, where the most of the Chinese adoptees come from, to conduct research, deliver books through the B4K program, and have religious schools to build MBL libraries. And in our volunteer center for the Chinese adoptees, MBL China Volunteer Center has assisted many adoption families to learn how to understand China adoption system and how to track the missing records of the birth parents and help the adopted travel in China during their own searches. And also MBL Adoption Family Library is one part of the MBL Village School Library project. It is just now Xinran said, me and share the story. It's a very good story. They joined MBL B4K project, and we set up the local two primary school library in Snow Mountain in Sichuan province. So it is for helping the adopted families to search in the information of the biology families through those village schools and supporting the local church's education. So I think we also will attach the adoption family documents list. It will help you to know what the right adoption records are and how to track your birth families in fast changing China. And many thanks for today's events. And if you want to reach us, you can email YMBL head office email address, and also my personal contact also in our MBL website. Yeah, that is all from my part from MBL Volunteer Center in Nanjing, China. We are here try our best to support. Yeah, thank you.
Now, thanks, Julia. And great, the early morning for you. You've been meeting with having a long time. Can you give us or give this, your personal email? Can you type in the chat room so easy for the families to contact you?
Okay, yeah, I will.
Yeah. Okay. Because this is only for the adoptive families, so these events can,
That's phenomenal. And yes, please do share all of your links or emails or contact information. There were actually a number of, so you touched upon a number of the questions that were submitted that were kind of collectively and thematically related to all the things you mentioned as far as resources, contact information, and how some adoptees can have additional support. So the next question related to this, and I think we had mentioned this in some of our previous conversations, is around language. So language and communication, I am a Korean adoptee, and I know that a lot of Korean adoptees have a really tough time going back to Korea because of that language barrier. But I know it is the same for all of us as we go back, whether you're Vietnamese, Chinese, or Korean. And so are there any language courses held in China or maybe by MBL online for adoptees to learn, Mandarin or immerse themselves in their birth culture?
Oh, yes. And I think we have lots of the resource about learning language, and the Chinese or Korean and Vietnamese or this kind of Asian languages. If you go to a British Council website, language center, they have this kind of program as well. And also, if one of you like to set up, I think MBL can organize Chinese teaching. Yeah, and particularly for your personal needs or group of people or whatever, this is what we do. Yeah, we're helping quite a lot of volunteers, schools. Yeah, in the UK, the last 15 years ago, Cambridge set up the program for primary school to study Chinese as first foreign languages. Then was very hard. So until 5 years ago, no, last year, maybe only 7 schools survived, still going on that. So more and more volunteers from China, from many countries, in Canada. Yeah, they have the one from Toronto as my friend, and she's working for the university, and she used to work in China education system. I think definitely she can set up this for you as well. There are so many Chinese language learning on YouTube or on the internet as well. But if you find some links, you want to ask our view about this study, you can contact MBL's head office. Then you send the link to us. We can help you to have a look to see that it's a good one or not good one. Yeah.
Okay. You can be our filter. Thank you very much.
Yes, I used to teach in London University for diplomats, UK diplomats, quite a lot. I can be very good teacher as well.
Well, to that, I mean, another question that was asked is, what sort of funding is available, and what would an application look like for Chinese adoptees?
Sorry about my English understanding.
No, your English is amazing. This individual had asked, what kind of funding might be available for Chinese adoptees, possibly to go back to China, or other kinds of supports that might be available for them. Are there like financial resources or funding opportunities for them? Maybe scholarships or something else?
Julian will set up a program. If you have a request, you give the date, you give the people, how many people, and what kind of places, and she will give you advice. Okay, particularly based on, for example, some adoptees from Jiangxi. Okay, so she might give you a few questions, how much you know about the Jiangxi, and have you been travel there, blah, blah, blah. And then she will give you advice, this first one. And secondly, based on your personal needs, they might have a program for you. And then they will give you a budget about this. For MBL, we never charge family for we are all volunteers working, but we do need the donation or support, because the volunteer, we are not just from online or talk to the family. When we had a very valuable or very important information, we send the volunteer physically to check, to make sure someone from the local still have information, or still have because sometimes the village disappeared, or sometimes the school changed, or sometimes lots of the bubbles there. So this part is come from people's donation. And my personal as well, and all of from my books, so we have a bigger percentage of our charity. So Julian did the same things. We're all doing the same things. So MBL never charged for the research. But when the family coming, and Julian will charge as the travel and cost. This is what we do. Yeah, Julian, I'm right?
Yes. Okay. They will give the request to us, also the email to the head office. So we're recording to what their documents and what the different part of the China, and we will give the different the travel price for the advice. They can choose what part they need, and or maybe visit the orphanage or some personal visit. So it depends on the individual request. Yes. And we
Also,
will
yeah.
experience suggestion to them, and we can have to before they travel, we can have to them to contact with the local or orphanage to check the details or something. That is no problem for us. We can give the call as we are in the local, so we can give the call to the local orphanage or local adoption center to check the information or check the details, check the process, contact her. Yeah, so make their trip more easier and safe and convenient before they come in.
But Julie, I want to double check with you about this. I think the volunteers cost, if the family want to the volunteer to accompany with them for their travel or research, because language or because local connection, so the family has to pay this volunteers travel cost. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. If they want to go to local villagers to research, if they go there, they will have to pay the travel fees for the volunteer, 1 or 2 volunteer, the travel fee, flight, train, hotel, something. Yeah, we have the budget and we have the research plan to give to the adoption families.
Okay. Also, I remember all of your volunteers for the adoptive family is normally you send the news out. You search for the you ask for the local volunteer. Yeah, and through the universities or the students or whatever. Yeah, relatives.
Yeah, we connect with the local organization or schools, so we will gain more support from the local.
Yes.
And then we will bridge the information to the adoption family. So when we come there, we will gain more support from the local place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what we did for last more than 10 years.
Yeah, because sometimes languages and local 关系, Chinese always have the trust between the relatives or their local friends, or they speak same accent languages. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that dialectal difference is like so vast and really kind of daunting, I think, to contend with. But I'm conscious of the time here, as mentioned, and Xinran, I would love to welcome you to kind of share any last closing remarks as we wrap up our conversation today.
The first of all, I want to 谢谢你，谢谢. And also, this year we coming to the Dragon Year in China. And the Dragon Year means the power and also the hope as well. So I think let's do something together, not just dialogue, to bring more people to join the conversation. And also let's try to open the space between adoptees, adoptive parents, and birth parents. This is my wish for this year and for you all. And I want to thank you for encouraging me to writing, to go on my research, to bridge between you and the Chinese mothers.
Yeah.
谢谢.
Thank you so much. And yes, please do continue all the work, amazing work that both you and MBL does. We certainly feel so fortunate to have partnered with you and to be able to host this afternoon, morning, evening, wherever folks are Zooming in from. And with that, we will close out this meeting today. We will continue the conversation if folks are interested on our Discord. There were a number of other questions asked, but unfortunately we weren't able to get to them. So feel free, if you would like to join that online conversation, you can apply online.
Also, I want to thank all the volunteers. We have over 1,000 volunteers in the last 20 years and help us to do that. Without them, we won't reach this point.
Yeah, volunteers are so important. The Asian Adoptees of Canada, we are all a volunteer board as well. Yeah. And, thank you again so much for everybody who took the time to join. Do apologize for some of the technical glitches at the beginning, but so pleased you were able to join us. And you can certainly look out for some future events that we will be announcing, some of which will be both online and in person. And so we look forward to welcome you folks then, and hope that you enjoyed this conversation and truly the gift that Xinran was able to share with us and her team in really some just beautiful insights and understandings of what that experience was like in writing her book.
May I share just news with all?
Of course.
My new book called The Book of Secrets will come in February, 1st February. And the first book I talk about writing the nonfiction about Chinese men.
Wow.
But in the book, he talked about a mother, wife, and a daughter. It's a very moving story. Thank you.
So, well, we hope that you share that with us when it's launched, and we're happy to help you promote it and share it amongst the adoptee community. So please do stay tuned, as we will also be sharing more information about that book once it's available.
Thank you.
Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you. Lots of love from London, from MBL, from our heart, and from Chinese mothers.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, thank you so much for taking the time to join us online for this Q&A with author Xinran and her truly heartbreaking and beautiful book, Message from an Unknown Chinese Mother, Stories of Loss and Love. For any more information about the Asian Adoptees of Canada, please feel free to reach out and visit our website at www.asianadoptees.ca. Thanks so much.